Hello and welcome to a quickie guide on Phase 3 of FRU. With that said, let's begin. The boss will begin south and start casting Hell's Judgment. This reduces everyone's HP to 1, so no need for mitigation, just make sure to heal everyone up as the next cast, Ultimate Relativity, hurts. Besides raid-wide damage, Ultimate Relativity will also distribute a bunch of debuffs to all players with varying timers. All of these are spell in waiting and include Dark Fire, which are spread AoEs, Dark Eruptions, that are also spread AoEs, Unholy Darkness, which are stacks, Dark Water, which is another stack, Dark Blizzard, which creates a donor AoE around the player, Shadow Eye, that dooms anyone looking at the player once expired, and Spell in Waiting Return, that places a return point once expired and gives another return debuff that will take the player back to their return point upon expiring. In addition to this, 8 Delight Hourglasses will also appear at every Cardinal and Intercardinal at the end of the Ultimate Relativity cast. We call these Traffic Lights. These will fire out baitable lasers and will fire out additional lasers rotating either clockwise or counterclockwise about 180 degrees, give or take. That's quite a lot though, right? But don't worry, I'll break it down bit by bit. First, we need to find out where the new north is, and who's baiting which traffic light. There are 2 ways to do this. The first method is to find the 2 traffic lights that have yellow tethers and leave 1 untethered traffic light between them, or find the single traffic light tethered to yellow. Either way works, as support will always be baiting these 4 traffic lights and DPS will always be baiting these 4. For explanation's sake, I'll be using the 1 traffic light between the 2 yellow tethered traffic lights as New North, as that's how my group did it. Now we know where and how to find New North. Next up is the debuff sets, what to do with them, and which debuff set baits what traffic light. These debuff sets are role based, so we'll assign support west, northwest, north, and northeast, and DPS east, southeast, south, and southwest traffic lights. You'll always handle your debuffs within your traffic light position, so it's a good idea to face your camera towards your traffic light once you found it. The support going north will have either a 20-second ice or 10-second fire, along with a 15-second return and 40-second dark eruption. The return rewind will always happen just before your 40-second debuff, so make sure you're placing this according to your last debuff. As north, if you have a 20-second ice, first soak the Unholy Darkness in middle. If you're 10-second fire, then go out and place it past your traffic light. Then place your return directly in front of your traffic light. Use the center dot in the spell and waiting effect above your player's model to determine the center of your hitbox to help with placing this return, as you don't want to be too far out or in, otherwise you'll either die to a baited traffic light or clip another player with your dark eruption. Then go middle and soak another Unholy Darkness. If you're ice, make sure to be as center as possible, and if you were a 10-second fire, make sure to be closer to the center to not get clipped by the ice. After that, bait your laser, either clockwise or counterclockwise according to where it's rotating, as to not bait it through the middle. Just like with return, use the center dot in the spell in waiting effect. Align yourself either left or right of the traffic light until the dot disappears, then wait until the first hit and run back into middle to soak 1 final Unholy Darkness. Then either face out of the arena or go opposite of your return point and face to the point to not get caught by the Shadow Eye player, as your return will stun you and snap where your character is facing. If done correctly, you should be in front of your traffic light with your Dark Eruption not hitting anyone else. If you manage to mess up and forget about this return at any point, then just wall it once everything else other than the return has been resolved to avoid an unnecessary wipe. The support going west will have a 20-second fire, 15-second return, and 40-second Dark Eruption. First take the Unholy Darkness middle, then place your return in front of your traffic light, then go out with your fire, but beware of the traffic light rotating next to you. You might need to go at an angle to not get hit here. After that, return middle and chill until the Unholy Darkness. Then bait your laser and prepare for the return. The supports going northeast and northwest will have 30-second fires, 25-second returns, and a 20 or 10-second Unholy Darkness, and a 40-second Shadow Eye. To determine which support goes where, have H1 anchor northwest and H2 anchor northeast, then have main tank default to northwest but adjust if H1 has 30-second fire, and off tank default to northeast and adjust to H2 if they have a 30-second fire. For example, if H1 and MT both have 30-second fires, then H1 will remain northwest and main tank will adjust northeast. This mechanic does a lot of damage, so it's best for healers to have a bit less to think about here. Regardless of if you have 20 or 10 seconds of Unholy Darkness, both of these are handled the exact same. First stack middle to soak Unholy Darkness, then bait lasers, then stack middle for the other Unholy Darkness, then place your return middle but slightly closer to your traffic light, then go out with your fire, then return middle and prepare for the return. If done correctly, you should be returned to the middle facing outwards and soaking the water stack. The DPS going south will have either a 30-second fire or 20-second ice, a 25-second return, and a 40-second Shadow Eye. First stack middle for the Unholy Darkness, then bait your laser, then stack middle again. If you are the ice, make sure you're correctly centered. Then place your return point center towards your traffic light. Then either stay middle if you are an ice or go out if you are a fire. Then come back middle and prepare for the return. The DPS going east will have a 20-second fire, 15-second return, 30-second Unholy Darkness, and a 40-second Dark Water. First stack middle for the Unholy Darkness, then place your return point middle, again slightly towards your traffic light. Treat it the same as Shadow Eye. Then go out with your fire, then come back in and stay for the Unholy Darkness. Then bait your laser. Then go back middle and prepare for the return. If done correctly, you should catch all the Shadow Eye players with your Dark Water while facing away from them. The DPS going southeast and southwest will have a 10-second fire, 15-second return, and 40-second eruption. Same deal as support here, have melees adjust to the ranged. So M1 will adjust to R1 and M2 will adjust to R2. To handle southeast or southwest, first go out with your fire, then place your return point in front of your traffic light. Then go middle and take the Unholy Darkness stack. Then bait your traffic light. Then return middle to soak the Unholy Darkness and prepare for the return. And that's everything you need to know for Ultimate Relativity. While getting used to this mechanic, I highly recommend having this cheat sheet open on your second monitor or something until you get comfortable with it. Link is in the description below, along with a document with all the diagrams. Also, one final note, throughout this mechanic, the party takes a fair amount of damage, so make sure you have a good amount of healing, mitigation, and if you're a tank and you have the spare brain power, then it's a good idea to throw your short cooldown on the 20-second fire DPS and healer if they have it. During the return, the boss will cast Shell Crusher, a stack AoE, into Shockwave Pulsar, a raid wide. Party mitigations can cover both hits here. The boss will then cast Black Halo on her target, a 2-player stack tank buster, but a tank can easily solo this with all their cooldowns plus the other tank's mitigation. Next, the boss will cast Spell in Awaiting, Refrain, and then Dark Water Free, which will target 6 random players with stack markers. At the end of the cast, the players will receive Spell in Awaiting, Dark Water Free with varying timers. 2 with 9 seconds, 2 with 28 seconds, and 2 with 37 seconds. Then the boss will cast Apocalypse. This starts middle and splits to a random cardinal or intercardinal direction, opposite of each other, and rotates either clockwise or counterclockwise, which leaves delayed circle AoEs. During this, the first Dark Water stacks will go off, and the boss will cast Spirit Taker. This will target a random player and do an AoE around them. Any other player hit by this will be sent flying into the wall. After which, the boss will return middle and cast Dark Eruption, targeting every player with spread AoEs. Halfway through the cast, the Apocalypse AoEs will start going off, and soon after the cast is finished, the second Dark Water stack will go off. The boss will then cast Darkest Dance, targeting the furthest player away with a Tank Buster, and proceed to knock back every player. Shortly after, the third Dark Water stack will go off. Again, that's quite a bit, and this one is probably harder than Ultimate Relativity in my opinion, but thankfully a lot easier to explain. To handle this, first put Support Northwest and DPS Southeast, and make a light spread. This will make it easier to visualize the water stacks, which are the first hurdle of solving. By default, supports will take their stacks most north, or DPS will take their stacks most south, but sometimes a support and DPS will need to swap if two of the same Dark Water timers are within the same row. Say two DPS have 9 seconds, then the DPS will have to swap places with a support. This is important because if the water stack is only soaked by 3 players, it will give those 3 players a significant damage down, which is something we want to obviously avoid. To solve this, we had one adjuster from each role and a priority system. For support, the priority system to swap from highest to lowest goes main tank, off tank, H1 and H2, and for DPS it goes M1, M2, R1 and R2, with adjusters being MT and M1. For example, if MT and OT both have the same timer, then MT would swap, or if M1 and M2 have the same timer, then M1 would swap. And MT and M1 will always swap unless someone from their role is already forced to swap, like 2 DPS having the same timer that isn't M1, then M1 would remain within their group. Now we know how to swap groups, the next mechanic we need to understand is Apocalypse. The best way to identify the 2 initial safe spots is watch it from the center and pay attention to the first 2 waymarks it hits. Then take note if it's clockwise or counterclockwise, and whichever direction it isn't going towards is your first 2 safe spots for both groups, which will always be opposite of each other. In this example, it is 1 and 3 to the right. Easier said than done though, because the boss will also be casting a Spirit Taker, so make sure to spread out. Not inherently difficult, but if you have to swap groups, either know what spread spot you're taking or have a system where the player who swaps groups always has a fixed spread spot. For us, we just get this player to remain put while the rest spread around them. If you had to swap groups, then return back to your original group and spread out in the safe spot for Dark Eruption, with tanks and melee taking the first spots and healers and range taking the back 2 spots. Tanks and melee will use the diagonal lines from the floor pattern, while ranged and healers can use the 2 circles to determine the safe spot. As soon as the second hit of Apocalypse AoEs go off, tanks and melees run in immediately, while ranged need to align themselves with this line marking on the floor and then run in and swap groups if needed. Then to handle Darkest Dance, one of the tanks with an invulnerability or all of their cooldowns needs to run out to the last 2 safe spots as the second stack goes off. To determine these 2 safe spots, you'll have to pay attention to where the first 2 waymarks to be reached by Apocalypse are, which you should be paying attention to anyway. Then count 2 waymarks from there, and that's your final safe spot. For example, here the Apocalypse reaches A and C first, so the safe spot will be B and D. The timing of this is extremely tight, so to help, I always save sprint for this and run in as soon as the second Dark Water stack hits 0. If you're not a tank, just pay attention to where the tank is running and react. In comparison to the tank, you have like 3 business days to get there. Anyway, after the knockback, the third and final water stack will go off. Here we have support left and DPS right looking at the boss. So if you need to swap, make sure you're doing it before the knockback. Then as a group, run back to the boss. Tanks and melees, you are safe to gap close here, but just run back a bit to soak the stack with your group. Then the boss will cast one last shockwave pulsar into Memory's End. This deals heavy raid-wide damage, or instantly wipes the raid if the boss is not below 20% HP. So use melee LB3 here if you have to. After that, you're going into P4, and that's where I leave you for now. Stay tuned for the P4 guide, but as always, thank you for watching, and thank you to my Patreons, as always, for supporting the channel. Anyways, do all the YouTube things, and take it easy. Goodbye.